Hi guys, today we're going to be looking at economic resources as well as the supply and demand and what that means. Okay, so to get started, economic resources, they consist of three different types. There's capital resources, there are natural resources, and human resources. Most of these you will have learned in the past in some course or another. First, probably you've heard of this in geography class actually back in grade 9. So just to define this, economic resources are needed to provide goods to consumers. So goods or services, and all three of these types of economic resources are needed. So first, let's talk about capital resources. So what does that mean? These are resources that last for a long, long period of time, and a lot of money is required in order to acquire these resources. So think about a building, equipment. Think about a car manufacturing plant and all the equipment that is required. So that is capital resources. Factories, cars, trucks that are needed by companies to deliver products. Those are all examples of capital resources. Next, we have natural resources. This is usually the one that's most easiest for students to understand. They're raw materials that come from earth, water, or the air. So stuff like oxygen, agricultural products, oil, gold, ore, wildlife, soil, iron, that kind of stuff. Next, we come to human resources, and this was my specialty when I was in university. And these are the actual people that work to create the goods or services that are being produced. So a factory worker, a teacher counts as a human resource, a nurse, all that kind of stuff. So these are things that cost a lot of money and are required for producing a product or providing a service. Natural resources are things that come from the earth, the water, or air, and human resources relate to people that are required to produce a good or provide a service. Okay, going on, we're going to learn about supply and demand. So here I have a little image. It says, I adhere to the law of supply and demand. You supply the treats, I demand more. So that's like a silly cat here just talking about that. I will demand more when you supply more treats kind of thing. But we'll be looking at these terms, both supply and demand, in more detail right now. So supply. So with supply, the definition is the quantity of goods or services that businesses are willing and able to provide within a range of prices that people would be willing to pay. So you can't just charge crazy amounts of money and expect people to say, okay, I'll pay that crazy price. There has to be some type of limitation. So for example, if somebody was selling you a tissue box for $500, chances are you probably wouldn't buy it, given like it's not coming from a celebrity or there's something very, very, very special about it. So and that's what we're talking about here when it comes to supply. So it's the quantity of goods or services again. So the law of supply is that supply increases as price increases. So think about yourself owning a business. If you notice prices are going up for something, you might be like, I'm going to supply more of it. So that's what this graph does here, because that means that you will be making more income. Because chances are it costs you pretty much the same price to purchase the item, but the final consumer is willing to pay more. So you will be able to supply more as the price increases. So there again, it just says usually as prices increase, producers will increase the quantity of goods they provide. Going on, there's a little comic here. Can you explain the phrase talk is cheap? It's because the supply always exceeds the demand. So people are always willing to talk. So not everyone's willing to listen. So that's why talk is cheap. All right, going on, conditions that affect supply. So there are factors that affect how much of a supply is available. So one is the change in the number of producers. So more producers increase the supply of goods and usually decreases the price because there's more competition out there. So for example, when VCRs first came out, my dad bought one for about $1,000. But as more companies came out and were able to produce it at a cheaper price, it increased competition, and there was a change in the number of producers. So that affected the supply significantly. Okay, price of related goods. So if gas prices increase, you might notice that people may not buy as many cars, or they may buy hybrid cars or even electric cars. So that's something that affects supply. A change in technology. I don't know that many people that are buying cameras as much as they used to. There are still people, but nowadays a lot of people have cameras on their phone. So that's a change in technology that is now affecting supply. So you could have tons of cameras on hand, but there might not be that many people willing to buy them. So you would need to decrease your supply. And also VCRs. When's the last time you saw anybody go to the store to buy one? So that's another change in technology. Change in expectations. So people might have certain expectations about a particular product. For example, nowadays there's a lot of talk about organic products. So that if you go to the grocery store, you may choose organic over non-organic products. So that also would affect supply. So maybe if you own a little fruit stand, you're going to notice that people are wanting these organic products and you might not be selling as many as the other non-organic ones, so you need to increase your supply of organic products. And then you have change in the cost of production. So say you provide a type of service, let's say you provide a snow removal service, and you actually go there with shovels as well as a couple of snow machines to remove the snow. So say the price of these machines has increased and also the price of shovels has increased. So the only way you can really supply the service now is if you charge consumers more. So these are all types of conditions that affect your supply. Next, we will be talking about demand. So going on, demand is the quantity of goods or services that consumers are willing and able to pay at a particular price. So now this is coming more, instead of looking at the provider, we're looking at the consumers. Okay, so what this means. So the law of demand states that usually consumers will increase the demand of a good or service as prices decrease. Which goods might this not apply to? So sometimes as prices go down, people are willing to spend more. But this might not apply always. The housing market, sometimes prices go up and there's a lot of demand for the housing still. For example, condos in Toronto right now are very, very highly sought after, but the prices are crazy and people are still going after them. Next, so the way to kind of summarize demand is demand increases as price goes down. Just think about that as yourself as well. So there might be a video game system that first comes out and you're like, I can ask my parents to buy it for me now, or I can wait a bit till prices go down. And as prices tend to go down, the demand will increase. Okay, so now let's look at things that actually create demand and what affects the creation of demand. So the first, consumer is aware of or is interested in a good or service. Businesses do this by advertising. So sometimes you can think of yourself, you've never even heard of a product before, you never needed it, then you see it advertised on TV or in a magazine, on the radio, and you're like, oh, that's so neat, I must have it now. So that's one thing that creates demand. Another one is ample supply of the good or service. So the good and supply is everywhere. It's every time you go out, you see this product, you see this type of service, and you're like, oh, I need it. So it's hyped up so much that now that it creates that demand within you for it. Next, we have the price is reasonable and competitive. So you might not be willing to pay $300 for a particular item. The price drops to about $200, and you're thinking, that might be reasonable. So it increases your demand for that particular product. Next, we have the good or service must be accessible. So there's no point in you demanding a product that, for example, they don't sell here in Canada or that is illegal to have here, for example. So if that good or service is accessible, that kind of increases your desire to perhaps want the product. So what affects demand? So there are certain things that affect it. So there's change in consumers' income. So that's a key one. So usually when you get an increase in income, so you're making more money, maybe you got a raise at work or you change jobs and you're earning more money, you are able to purchase more goods and services. But it could also mean less as well. So it's not always the case. So say you get a $10,000 raise, that means you have 10,000 extra dollars to spend. So you would think that you would be spending that money, that would increase your demands for certain products, but maybe you put it right into the bank right away. Who knows? Change in consumers' tastes. So for example, some things may be really, really cool. They could be fads and trends, which we're going to talk about later. They can come into the market and they can just go out as quickly as well. So think back to when you're in grade 3 or 4 and something that you bought that was really, really cool and now it's maybe collecting dust at home and you're just like, what is this? A good example could be there's so many different things. Like when I was younger, we had these scrunchies that we used to tie our hair in ponytails with, and we used to put the ponytail at the side of our head versus the back. So who really does that anymore? Okay, so there's also can be changes in what we expect in the future. So if we think the price will decrease for a particular thing, we'll wait to buy it. So I see this a lot at the gas stations. So I'm like, oh, the price is now 100, sorry, 102.9. And then I'm like, oh, I think it might go down to 99.9 tonight. So I'll wait till maybe after work to go get my gas because I think the price will decrease. Okay, so going on, this is a supply and demand curve, and this you will see a lot in college university. So basically, it's saying that you have to come up to some type of equilibrium, some middle ground. So as we have our supply over here, so as prices increase, more goods or services, the quantity is supplied. But as a consumer, as prices decrease, we demand the product more. So what you want to do is you want to find that middle ground, and that would be the perfect price and quantity to have available for consumers. So there you have it. So now you know about economic resources as well as supply and demand.